Good morning. Welcome to the Forex Pro Charts weekly analysis for the week beginning March 27th, 2011. This week we are looking at the Euro USD, starting with the monthly chart as we always do. Here we see that price on the monthly chart is closer to our resistance weekly armpit than our support weekly armpit, but basically in the middle of our playing field with a large area on either side. The support monthly armpit is quite a ways away. We don't expect to see price even approach that for quite some time, and has not approached it for several months. Price instead looks to be moving up towards this monthly armpit, and once it gets within this area here, we could be expecting to see a price reversal as we saw over here. However, you will notice a little bit unusual feature on this chart where we have this monthly armpit and the solid upper edge of our trading field, but then a second portion of our trading field up here. So if price passes here, then we will be looking for it to turn again somewhere in between this monthly armpit and the second upper edge of our trading field. But right now, price has quite a ways to go before it reaches either edge of the trading field, and we see that price appears to be in general in an upward trend, even though the 50 EMA shows it basically flattened out. At this point, the price appears to be in an upward trend, and we would be expecting it to move gradually up towards this area. So that's it for the monthly chart. Let's take a look at the weekly. So looking at the weekly looking at the weekly chart, we see here that price is in a resistance zone. And when we had the results video for last week, we saw that we had a nice trade on this zone last week where we had a potential gain of up to 180 pips. And so we are waiting to see what price will do ultimately here, whether it will move back down out of the zone and move down towards this support zone, which is a new zone, or whether it will then move through the zone and continue up to this resistance zone. So looking at the zones on the chart, looking at this zone here, we see that we had a very nice pattern on the weekly chart, which we look for in addition to the daily chart. This was the first revisit to the zone, so we were not at all surprised to see a bounce off this 60-minute armpit, a very nice bounce. And you can see that we had a fairly small risk, although we'll look at that in a little bit more detail on the additional charts. So should price move down and continue down to this zone, we'll be keeping this zone active. And although it will be a little bit weaker because price has already returned once, we will be watching that zone. Again, very nice pattern on the weekly chart, and looks to be a strong zone. We'll see how price moves out of the zone this time, should it do that. So I'm sorry for that. Okay, so if price just moves down a little bit, and say maybe it will bounce on this trend wall, which it's been following this trend wall up, so say it bounces off that again and moves up here, what does this zone look like? Well, here we have a slight pattern on the weekly chart. Overall, you can see that this was part of a downtrend on the weekly chart. However, we did have price down, then move back up, and then down again. So we had a slight pattern. This is a fairly small zone, and it is directly under this monthly armpit. We have the 60-minute armpit here, and you may want to consider risk not only from the 60-minute armpit to the edge of the zone, but from the 60-minute armpit to the monthly armpit, which would make a little bit more of a risk. But also, again, the presence of this monthly armpit really increases the chances that price will be reversing here or bouncing fairly nicely. So we would see this as a strong zone, and should price return to this zone, we would expect to see a nice bounce in this area as well. Finally, when price moves up, should price move up again, we always like to look on our weekly chart at two zones up. Should price move up through the monthly and through the weekly armpits, it would hit this zone up here, which, as you can see, again, we have the pattern on the weekly chart, and it is right below the upper edge of our trading field. So again, we would expect to see a nice bounce there. So we have a couple of nice zones coming up, strengthened by the monthly armpit and the upper edge of our trading field. Now, should price continue down here and move to this zone, we have a very slight pattern on the weekly chart. This is a new zone, looks like a fairly small risk. We'll examine that in a little bit more closely, but this is not a real clear pattern on this chart. Price moved fairly nicely out. We'd want to see that move out on the daily chart to see what happened here, where it looks like we had a little bit of price movement back and forth. You can see on these other zones that price appeared to move very strongly out. So we would look down here and see price moving down here. A little bit of a caution because we just don't see quite the clear pattern on the weekly chart as well. Looking at this zone, when price returns to this level, again, we have a very nice clear pattern, and then price moved up strongly, and it would be the first revisit to that zone as well. As you know, often our newer zones are not as strong. Sometimes we'll get a new zone, price will come right back to that fairly quickly, and that often will indicate that while we might still see the bounce for 20 pips off the 60-minute armpit, that price will not move as strongly out and may eventually pass through this zone. So that's the weekly chart. Let's take a look at the daily chart. Okay, so looking at the daily chart on the EU, we see that here at the zone's origination, price moved strongly down, and looking at it coming back up, we saw a pretty nice move up. We did see one little bounce off these off these trend walls here, but then price here moved strongly up, bounced here off the 60-minute armpit, down, up, down, and price here at the end of the week is down around the daily armpit. So we're looking to see whether price can breach this trend wall and continue down. If it does, it will also have to breach this monthly trend wall, which is a little bit more difficult. And so we'll be watching to see if price does indeed breach that trend wall. If it does, then we would expect it to continue all the way down here. We saw price move up nicely, then return just briefly. So you can see here price has come back to this zone just very briefly, and then back up. So when price comes back down here, this would be a second revisit to the zone. So that's something that we would want to keep in mind. We do have a 50 pip risk here on this. On this, we have about a 40 pip risk up here, and of course we have the 5-minute armpit on both of these zones that we can also trade. So in this instance, we would not have gotten the trade had we taken the 5-minute armpit, but that armpit is available down here, and some of you may want to take that depending on your risk tolerance. So that's what we're looking for here. We're waiting to see which direction price takes. Price looks to be consolidating a little bit between these weekly trend walls, and we're waiting for price to either break below or above and continue up, or again below and continue down. So that's what we're going to be looking for the coming week. We're watching to see what price does when the market opens again on Sunday evening, and what it does Sunday and Monday. Okay, and then finally taking a look at the EU on the hourly chart. Can see here what we went over in our results video. Price came up very nicely. Actually, it didn't quite touch the 60-minute right here. Came up here, touched the 60-minute, and then bounced all the way back down. Depending on what your situation is with cushions and so forth, you may have gotten into this trade right here. You would have at least gotten your 20 pips here, and again, depending on what you do with your cushions and so forth. If you entered here, you probably saw your all of your lots produce. Again, depending on where you place your stops and so forth, but you may even have a portion of your trade open. Many of our traders keep their final lot, move it to break even, and then just leave it waiting for price to move down to the zone below. So here, most of our traders would have seen at least their second lot fulfill as price went down to the daily armpit. and actually went down to this trend wall and bounced. And some of you will still have a portion of your trade in. This was a very nice trade for about 180 pips, if I remember right, and was a good pair for us last week. And we'll be watching to see what direction price takes here this coming week. Okay, so that was our analysis of the Euro USD for the week beginning March 27th. 2011. For more information or to subscribe to our full analysis and charting services, please go to www.forexprocharts.com, and you can get a 1-week demo to our charts in our analysis service. We provide analysis on 10 major currency pairs for the week, and depending on the level of your subscription, we provide trade alerts during the week. We look forward to seeing you back next week. Have a good week trading.